Good morning.
Good morning.
How is everybody? It's Bead School. Kate is away in Philadelphia with Janice. We'll
Right.
be in Philadelphia too soon. So it's Emily and Gracie. Cheers.
Cheers.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is so exciting, Emily.
I am excited to have you here too.
This is because I've always wanted to learn how to do brick stitch.
I know you have.
And I've been
I know.
bugging you
We've
about
had we've had many conversations about it and many scraps of paper
Exactly.
drawing. Yeah.
And
yeah.
a lot of you showing me very slowly what we're doing
Wait,
today.
wait again?
And I did all this by myself.
Of
I'm
course
just
you
kidding.
did. Of course you did. So this is Bead School. We're going to tackle some brick stitch. I have kind of a long history with brick stitch. It was the first stitch that I ever learned. And I taught myself out of Bead and Button magazine. And I have my very first project with me to show you because it's really bad. I've come a long way in the 20 years since then. But how are we doing? Everybody visiting? Everybody checking in? We doing good?
We have Sylvia and Melanie so far.
Hi, Melanie. I think maybe Mel's the one who brings her grandson with her as well sometimes.
Canadian Melanie.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for Gita.
Oh, hi, Gita. We're going to jump the gun.
Scanning
Hey.
the comments, looking for
Hey,
that G.
Janice. Everybody, I'm sure everybody's watching. So we have just a couple little things that I wanted to kind of do before we got to brick stitch.
Sure.
I had a email from a student, and I'm going to say I've misplaced her name, so I'm just going to address it from straight out. We were talking about, she was asking me some questions about peyote, and as far as peyote graphing. So when we did the peyote bracelet, I showed a little graph, and she had actually chosen some peyote patterns out of a book or off the internet, and most of those were peyote stitched in delicas instead of size 11 beads. So delica beads are a little bit different shape than around 11. And so what that's going to do to a pattern or a graph is it's going to stretch it long ways. It's going to change its direction a little bit. So if you do it in 11s, you're going to get a shorter, more compact graph. But anytime you see something that's graphed in delicas or graphed in 11s, you may, of course, go right ahead and do it in the opposite side of the beads. If you see it in 11s, you want delicas, do it in delicas. That's quite fine. Delicas do have large holes. They kind of click together like little tiles or little mosaic kind of pieces. So they're certainly interchangeable. You may get a little bit of a stretching of the graph one way or the other, but that's really the biggest difference.
You said they're like tiles. Is that because the walls aren't curved on the outside?
Right.
They're flat?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a little bit like you took a slice from a pipe. If you can imagine a piece of PVC pipe we use in construction all the time, you might see around, and you took a chunk from it. That's exactly what a delica would look like. Thin walls and flat and straight, kind of more squared off.
Got it.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah.
We have a Vildan from Istanbul.
Oh,
Says
very nice.
hello.
Marhaba.
And I apologize, I cannot pronounce the first name, but Frippery is watching from the beach in Rhode Island today.
Oh,
that
cool.
sounds fun.
Awesome. I bet it's beautiful there today, too.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think that's Angela.
Oh, is it?
Okay. Cool. Excellent.
Very
Excellent.
good.
Cool. We love the East Coast,
I
you know?
know. It's been weird here in the Bay Area just because the weather has been fluctuating back and forth. It's different for us, so.
So we have
We're all
foggy
freezing.
days a lot of the time
Yeah.
in the summertime, which
Yeah.
is puzzles everyone. They don't understand how that happens. And then the fog wears off in the afternoon usually, and we have a nice warm sunny day.
Right.
So you always need a sweater
Yeah.
in the Bay Area.
There's
in your
sometimes
car.
a breeze depending on which microclimate you're
Right.
in.
Right. And it changes. You go to county, it's going to be a good swing of 20 to 30 degree differences. And go out to the valley out here in the Sacramento Valley, and it'll be 100. And it'll be 50 at the beach. So
Crazy.
we're kind of lucky that way.
We are.
Yeah, yeah. So I wanted to show a couple of samples of brick stitch kind of before we get to it, because it's an interesting stitch, like peyote stitch. It can actually be done in a few different ways, but there are some kind of classic ways that we've done. You'll see brick stitch talked about. One of them, and this is I'll bring in my my earliest trial at brick stitch. One of the most classic ways that you're going to see brick stitch is when it's used as an earring. And this is the way they, not too long ago, would call brick stitch Comanche stitch. Because it would happen in this pyramid shape, and then the fringe of the earring was dangling down from below that pyramid. We're going to use the same pyramid today, but it's going to actually be the base for a bracelet. So it's going to draw the strands together for the bracelet. This is a great way to play around with color. It's a kind of a small amount of work and paletting, and I really do see this happening quite a bit still. I just found a designer online that I really liked who's doing something like that, but with a necklace.
Sounds good.
Kind of fun, right? So these are some samples, and I know we'll have some pictures of those coming along on our.
Oh, but by the way, this was kind of like that tile look you were talking about.
Oh yeah, that's your delicates. Yeah, yeah. So you can see.
Zoom in.
Yeah, you can see really clearly how the brick stitch, these two beads sit on top of the join of the next one. And this is that Delica bead versus a size 11 bead. So sitting side by side, a little bit different look, you know. I like them both.
I
mean,
know,
I don't
both
discriminate.
really clean. Yeah.
Right? So here's my early days of beading. This was my very, very first attempt or mastery of brick stitch.
Nice.
And in the base row were bugle beads, which I'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's also another classic way to kind of start off brick stitch. Now, you might notice that these gold beads in here look a little bit rustic, is maybe a nice way to, maybe a pleasant thing to say about them. Metallic beads sometimes can be very problematic. And I remember making these earrings and looking at them and thinking, wow, they're not as gold as they were when I first started. And in fact, the gold color was wearing off while I was working on it. And that's super frustrating. So nowadays we have much better metal plated beads. And certainly if you look for things that are called Duracoat or permanent galvanized, they're much more durable than they used to be. I also like to use a sterling silver plated bead, which also gives me a nice bright color and looks really good for the long haul.
So plated, Duracoat, and what was the other one you said? Galvanized.
Permanent galvanized.
Permanent galvanized.
So the Duracoat and the permanent galvanized are important things to look for. This silver plated is real metal over the glass, but all the other ones were just a silver seed beads or gold seed beads. You could say that's gold colored. And not permanent.
I see.
Okay, and even the old galvanized ones were not permanent and
I
would
see.
come off while you were working with them, which is super
then you get this
disappointed. Disappointing.
I see,
All
I
that
see.
work, right? How we doing, Kara? Questions, comments?
We're good. I think everyone's
Good.
just waiting for
Waiting for
the tutorial. There's a lot
Okay.
of talk about Bead Fest and
Oh,
there's a couple
awesome.
mentions of the tiaras. Maybe you guys want to mention
Oh
that.
yeah,
sounds
yeah,
good.
absolutely.
We're doing a tiara challenge, which you can find details on our blog and on a
I saw Kate's. It looked really cute.
I know Kate had she used the bugles from our Lalique Looming Day, which
Yeah.
was really cool. Everyone did a really good job.
Everyone
really,
should just
really
read it. Drea wrote really.
The photography
Yeah.
is fabulous.
Oh,
of all
thank you.
the,
Thank
Oh my
you.
God.
the pictures of all of us wearing our tiaras is
Well,
fun.
thank you. So yeah,
Cool.
that's
All right.
exciting.
So we're going to jump in, and I'm going to do a little bit of drawing first, like we've done before for Seed Bead School. And I'm going to do a little demoing. And, you know, if I had you guys all here in person, one thing I would really recommend is to watch me go through the first few steps and then do. So if you're going to be watching this later, I assume most of you have not whipped out your seed beads and are trying to do this with me. But if you have, just hang on for a minute and watch first, then try it.
That's how I learned.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still learning, so now it's a
Excellent.
recorded piece, and I
Yeah,
can
yeah.
review and review.
What you got?
Going back to last week,
Okay.
Angela wants to let you know that she started her Pathways project and it's
Excellent.
not making her cry this time.
Yay!
That's good. That's really
Yeah,
good.
it's sometimes seed bead can be learning a stitch can be hard,
Yeah.
and there's no kidding about it. You know, I know that I spent a lot of time with my brick stitch early on, and like, ugh, I'm gonna fling it against the wall here in a minute because I can't make it work. Okay. So brick stitch, the one we're gonna do today for our bracelet, is in fact the typical style that we.
So this is, are we going to go down now?
Yeah.
or-
Well,
Yeah.
let's move it.
Yeah, so
let's
we're
go ahead and move it.
going to go in here.
Brick stitch that we're going to do today as the base of our bracelet. Maybe you want to hold this one up for me.
Which one?
Any of these,
This one.
that's fine. Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to establish first this pyramid structure, and then the strands will come off from there. We'll make two of these, one for each end, one for the button, one for the loop. Button first, then make the loop to fit. When we do this pyramid style brick stitch, which is very classic, we could use this for earrings or for bracelets. We don't have to have it be this pyramid structure. I'll talk about that a little later. But this is very classic and a great way to learn this stitch and get very comfortable with it.
I really like how you graph these out. It's so easy to understand.
And I did actually make a change in the graph this time. When we talked about peyote stitch, we talked about, do you flip your work or do you not flip your work? And when we did our herringbone last week, we did flip our work. So in this case, the graph that you'll get in your episode notes, the first two colors, there's 2 beads in each of these rows, this is the first 2 beads that you'd added. So I would flip, and then this would be my first 2, back and forth, right across, right? So it actually shows you how that works and how you'll follow right along with it, okay? So we're going to start our brick stitch today by first building a base. And this base row can really be as many beads tall as you might like. So I tend to like 2 or 3. 1 is pretty small and pretty delicate, but it can be done. It's fine. We actually have names for these groups of beads, and we call them stacks. We're going to create a 9 stack wide piece. All right. I do tend to use an odd number, and I'll show you why that happens in a minute. But the way we do this is very similar to what we started with the herringbone from last week. We started with a stopper bead, that one on the thread first. There's my stopper bead. And I bring my thread up through the bead, around the outside, and back in. So for this one, instead of 4 beads like we did last week, I'm going to put 6 beads on. And these are 1, 2, writing backwards, 3, 4, 5. Ooh, that's really good. I managed that one almost. And 6 of the beads that I added, right? And I went around like that and looped back through, coming through again, all the way around, and back out to add the next stack.
Hey, Emily,
Yep.
can you just remind everyone of the beads that we're using today?
We're using size 11 seed beads, and we're going to use our black, white, and turquoise seed bead school colors. You know, it really doesn't matter what beads you use to learn with in this particular one. I like 11s because they're pretty common, pretty easy to come by. But if you use 8s, keep in mind that your beads might be flopping around a little bit on your thread more than is comfortable. And you may have to keep your tension a little bit tighter. Okay? So if I was going to make 9 stacks across, this is what it would look like. I would come through the first 3 beads, twice, going around, through the 6th, and looping myself around by adding stacks of beads side by side. We're going to do this just in a second with some beads. But see how as I establish this, my thread path changes directions? Goes counterclockwise and clockwise. Okay? So ultimately I'm going to end up here, having my 9 stacks of beads. Okay? In this case too, it might be helpful to consider these stacks of 3 actually just 1 bead. So if I did it with bugle beads, the same thing would apply. I would just have 1 bead. Oops.
Oops. Yeah, move up there.
Sorry. Too far?
I just, it's in a good place. I just had to get the camera there.
And around. And this is your part of your graph that you can actually play around with. You can draw this yourself if you like. One way to learn a thread path is to draw it before you do it. Okay? So when I finish with this grouping, what I want to do is actually work my way back down so that I'm actually coming out of stack number 1. And to do that, all I have to do with my thread is simply stitch up and down, up and down. I call this a serpentine, right? Up and down, and I'll come out right here, okay? So using an odd number of stacks actually makes me come out at this point. My tail of thread and my stopper bead is down here at the bottom, which is fine, but it's kind of in my way. So I do like to come out of that top stack. If I used an even number, I'd be coming out down here, right? And then my thread would just be in my way.
I see.
Question, Karen?
Can you use any size bugle with this?
Yes.
Okay.
The taller the bugle, the taller the stacks will be.
Okay.
Sure, any size bugle. Japanese bugles tend to have softer edges, and they're not so hard on the thread, but absolutely any kind.
As opposed to like check, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. All right, so let me pull back here just a little bit and get a needle and thread loaded up.
Wait. Can we show a few more, or are
Oh,
you saving
sure.
that for the end?
No,
Because
no,
I
no.
want to show my favorite one from you that we didn't have a chance to look at.
Yes.
Oh, and those yellow earrings too.
Okay.
Because you guys, I was so excited about
Okay,
Brick's.
Grace.
Show and tell.
Grace
Yeah.
wants some more show and tell.
Yeah, I wanted some more because I'm like looking at all your amazing samples. And
Well, yeah, I thought we'd bring some more samples in here, but you never know when, right? So, one of the things that I showed Grace, and this was not in my jar of samples, but it is a way that you can play around with brick stitch, is not only build the pyramid going up, but actually build the pyramid going down. And I thought I had just a single one of those over here, but I guess I don't. Okay.
right here.
Oh, there it is. Good. So this is what these units looked like as I made them. And this was sort of a bracelet that never came to the finishing stage.
Such a shame.
I know. Well, it's not
Well,
over yet.
It's not over. It's not over. It's true.
So the base row is stacks of 3, working themselves up, and I stopped at 3 at the top, which gives me a little bit of a truncated pyramid, but that's okay. I kind of like that look. And I made these separately, and then each one just got attached by continuing with the same steps I was doing with my original joining of the stacks.
I'm gonna pull a Kate Richburg.
Uh-oh.
I'm gonna
Oh,
put it
are you gonna
on for
model?
everyone.
So this is where I was going, where this was going.
Tones.
Yeah.
I love it
Yeah.
so
Unfortunately,
much.
it's not coming out very
it's
well
not?
No.
on the camera.
That's okay.
but,
Well, still, I enjoy modeling it because I love it so much.
I think it a little bit more when you're modeling it.
Right?
Oh, okay.
You
So-
guys, we have a first-time visitor from Canada.
Hi.
What's her name?
Elsa.
Elsa.
Hi, Elsa.
Welcome.
No, welcome.
Welcome to the Bee family.
So here's another little sample,
Oh, I
which
love this too.
we'll do this as a project in January, I promise. So we'll be ready for Valentine's Day, because this is another great way to make a pretty piece of jewelry. And this is the base row right in the middle. Can you see?
Mm-hmm.
And then I built down and then up to make the hearts.
It looks so organic.
I do too. And that was a fun way to play around with different colors of reds and purples and dark reds. There's a little bit of irregularity, and that's one of the things you'll see with seed beads. Size 11 seed beads, size 8 seed beads, you'll have that irregularity. Delica beads, on the other hand, very crisp and even, so a lot
it.
less irregularity,
Interesting.
a lot more consistent. And then I started working on something the other
Oh, yes.
day, just because I could, of doing my brick stitch without the decreasing. So even count flat brick stitch without that decreasing into that pyramid shape. And I think this is going to end up being a little project for you guys too down the road. But I was very inspired by looking at some rag rugs and really loving how that weaving was coming out. A little bit of texture, but it's nice to see a little bit of variation in the seed beads, right?
It's so beautiful. And you were saying before we went on air that you didn't even, I know we're not talking about this piece, but you didn't have like a pattern in here, and yet it looks so even.
Well, I do have somewhat of a pattern.
Oh,
I have 5 colors of beads,
right.
2 metallics, which, yes, metallics are critical to my work. 2 metallics, the bronze and the antique silver. And then I have a brick red, a Picasso green, and a Picasso blue. So what I did is I started out was a bronze row, a row of blue, a row of green, a row of red, and then the antique silver. And then in the next grouping of colors, I didn't repeat that, although the colors are the same. So all I tried to do is make sure that the colors on either side of the metallic were not the same. And that, other than that,
Sure.
it's totally random. You know,
So cool.
because I really like random rather
Yeah.
than pattern myself.
It gives a really nice texture,
Yeah.
just not being consistent.
Right, right. And even on these beads, if you look at them carefully, the greens are a little bit shorter, so are the blues. The reds are a little bit stouter, and the metallic ones also a little bit taller themselves. Right?
Wonderful.
Fun.
Really nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, this one brought all kinds of wild things to to my mind.
I just want to make it a choker.
I know.
That's what I always
know.
do.
There were some
Karen's ready to make choker. So I actually was thinking about double wrapping with this.
there were some questions about the stiffness, which is
Yeah,
Oh, I
yeah. It's got a little bit of body. And I think I actually might end up making this in Fireline and making it into a bangle that will slip on. So it won't have to have a clasp. because right now I'm feeling very anti-clasp.
What did you use? What thread did you use with this one?
Just a gray
That's the lighting.
KO, just a dark gray. Grays are pretty much one of my fallback colors. A dark gray, a light gray, with darker colored beads. And if your beads are opaque, you're really a little bit freer to use different colors. With transparent beads, the color of the thread will really impact how it looks now.
Makes
Right?
sense.
Yeah, but I think that'll be really cool as a bangle, right? It's sort of sweatery or socky or something. Oh yes, and then Grace had some really exciting ones that she's been pushing on.
They match.
It's okay.
they're
It kind of looks like what you're wearing today, Gracie. I don't know.
I love it.
So this is also brick stitch, and this also brings up a previous project that we have at beadshop.com. So in this case, I did brick stitch around the edge of a component. So if you can see in the centers of these is a marquee or an eye-shaped component with the brick stitch then attached to it and working its way around the outside. I did use 3 different sizes of beads by using delicas, 11s, and 8s. Okay, and as I did that on purpose because the circle's getting bigger and bigger as it goes further out and
Makes
around.
sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're graduating it, and it
Naturally
looks so
graduates,
pleasing. Yeah.
right? So that's a lot of fun. And these could be earrings or pendants. I know that there's a designer Grace really likes that does a lot of that work.
Right.
And so it's pretty cool. Okay. And then these are my other brick stitch bracelets that I've made over the years with different types of beads. Some pearls, some hexagonals. There's lots of choices out there in the world that you might find. Just some 11s and some fire polished crystal and some glass pearls. You know, a lot of fun. Very easy to wear. And this could also be fashioned into a necklace if you chose.
Kate is in.
Hi,
And
Kate!
Billy.
Awesome. She must be on a lunch break.
I hope Billy's treating you well, Kate.
And I
Yay!
saw Cara.
Oh, hi, Cara.
Hi, Cara. Cool.
Oh wait, do you want to show those really quick? Or
I
no?
do.
Okay, sorry.
That's all right. Yeah, I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
I'm so excited.
So I am going to bring in this little design board here that we set up with our dancer earrings on them. And these are built just the way I built mine, around a round component. There's thread holding the first base row of beads on, and then brick stitch the rest of the way. So brick stitch is a really great versatile stitch. You know, you can do it in a lot of different ways. We can do it in flat, we can do it round, we can do it even or odd count. Lots of choices,
I know.
right?
It's confusing, but you're here to guide the way.
So brick stitch is one of those different stitches. We use the loops of the thread that we're going to create to hold things together. And it's a little different from peyote. It's a different thread path, for sure. And historically, it's been around a long time. I have this great National Geographic that I picked up in some supermarket somewhere along the line that I was flipping through. And it's a National Geographic all about the treasures of Egypt. So it actually talks a lot about the mummies and the architecture. And I just wanted to share with you this photo that's in this one page. This is a net of beads that was laid over the sarcophagus of
I'm gonna kind of try to zoom in and see if I get some
Sure.
more detail. I'm not sure.
of a priest. And there's netting, brick stitch in here as well. These are all clay beads, so beads made out of ceramic and then glazed and fired, which was the earliest glass, and made in what's called faience glass. So it's a very thin layer of ceramic, of glass on the outside of a ceramic bead. But the beads were really made to emulate precious stones. So it looks like turquoise, it looks like lapis lazuli, malachite, coral, all those things that were very expensive and very hard to get. This was hours and hours and hours and days of work. And when this was moved, the netting would disintegrate because the fiber inside was not stable after all those years. This is a 2,500-year-old mummy, right?
It's absolutely gorgeous.
It is really amazing.
And to think that they made them out of clay and they made these fine holes.
And then strung them together with thread that was probably grass
Right.
or something.
Reeds or whatever.
Yeah.
Wow.
Papyrus maybe, something
yeah.
like that.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Or
Goodness.
linen, maybe even a linen thread, but still that's all long gone. Right?
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah,
It's
you
so
know what?
cool to see the ancient legacy live on, I guess.
I think it's wonderful that we're still connected to other folks in ancient ways for the beading that we do, for sure. So we're going to get started here making these pyramids. And I have to tell you that I did a little homework ahead of time, and I like to call this the magic oven. Because you remember watching those cooking shows where they would put something in a pan, it would look really exciting, and they'd put it in the oven, and then they'd open the oven right below it and pull out the finished dish.
Yes.
It was like, wow, where do I get that magic oven? How do I get that?
You have Emily Miller make you your
Stitching away at home.
Bob Ross of beading.
Exactly.
So what we would do first for this particular project is make these 2 pyramids. Additionally, we're going to put the button and loop on them, and we're going to measure the distance that we would like to have in between and create our strands in that length. Okay, so it's actually pretty simple. What I do recommend is that you do use something measuring on the table that you can mark on and double check yourself, because there's nothing worse than having the bracelet get longer or shorter as you're kind of working along. Okay, and you want it to measure the right thing for your wrist. My general measurement rule for seed bead pieces is that if it fits around your wrist and touches the beadwork, then you're kind of good. The button and the loop will provide that bit of ease, the amount that allows you to put the bracelet on and take it off.
That makes sense.
Okay. Again, with needles and thread, you really don't need too much thread to start out with, and I think a yard to a yard and a half is plenty of thread. And I'm going to, actually, Gracie, I'm going to change you over. I know you made yourself a needle and thread, but I'm going to give you another color so that everybody can see what you're doing too. And I'm going to use my dark blue, clear blue thread here and thread it in a size 11 needle. And remind you guys about how I like to thread my needle.
Wait, 11 or 12? 11.
I'm sorry, 12 needle.
11 knots is what we're working with.
Yeah, we're working with 11 knot beads. Can I also have you hand me the beeswax from the kit there? So when I thread my needle, the way I do it is I pinch the end of the thread tightly, hang on one sec, tightly between my thumb and forefinger, and I needle the thread. I actually put the eye of the needle down onto the end of the thread, and I pull it through. See how it pulls through my fingers? And it's magically on the thread. So one thing that frustrates folks a lot is just getting that silly needle threaded. I tend to use a 12 needle for almost everything. If you really are struggling hard, go ahead and use a 10. It's a bit bigger, and it may give you some fits when you're getting into lots of beads and threads, but for the most part, you should be okay. And I'm going to take a bit of beeswax, and I'm just going to pull my thread.
You're a beeswaxer?
Right over that beeswax, absolutely. Right? And that's all the beeswax that I needed. It stiffens up my thread just a little bit, and it keeps the beads from sliding around, flip-flopping around too much. Okay? All right. And how about a stopper bead for you?
Sounds good.
Oh, that's kind of a lumpy one. Oh, that's a lumpy one too.
I'll just use this blue one, right?
No. You have
Okay.
another color.
Yes.
Have a fun color. You're wearing orange. Did you pick up the orange one? I figured that you would.
Exactly.
I picked up a blue and white striped one because it's really different,
I like
right?
that.
So I'm going to slide that down to within about 6 to 8 inches of the end of my thread, and I'm going to put my needle back through the bead to create that stopper bead, so it keeps my beads from sliding off. Remember, the stopper bead has nothing to do with your design, your patterning, anything like that. It's just there to keep the first few beads from falling off. Okay?
Got it.
So I'm going to pick up a combination of colors, and really I'm only doing this so that you can see what I'm doing next. And the beauty of having a variation in colors is that it's easy to see for that, just for that learning step. So I'm going to pick up 6 beads on my needle and thread, and I'm going to grab 3 black and 3 white. Now remember, black and white beads actually are different sizes.
I remember that.
Right? Black beads are a little bit bigger than the white beads, a little taller. That's okay for this one, not going to be a problem. Okay? I have my 6 beads on my needle, and let me tell you a habit that I have gotten into over the years. Whenever I pick up a seed bead on my needle, I take a quick look at the bead. If it's lumpy or misshapen or really big or really small compared to the others, I might choose to take that one off. Once I've stitched through it again, it's kind of a pain to have to unthread my needle and take the thread out. that kind of thing. Okay?
That makes sense.
So I'm going to slide them down to my stopper. And I'm going to go through in two steps here. I find this a lot easier. First, I'm going to go through the black. Pull that up tight.
Will it move away from your stopper?
The stopper may move with it if you push real firmly. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
All right.
We have a question.
Sure.
Can you just remind everyone, what's the name of this bracelet pattern again?
Brick stitch bracelet.
And Kate's cheering you on, Grace.
Yay, go
Oh,
Gracie! And I'm going to go
So
then
far, so
down
good.
through those white beads. So that's my first 2 stacks.
You have to pull tight to
I
get
do
them?
pull it up tightly to get them to sort of sit side
it.
by side.
Okay.
Okay? So that's what we're looking for, those 2 sets of stacks.
Oh, cool. Mine
Side
looks
by
like
side.
yours.
Way!
Can you guys move those bracelets out of the way?
Sure.
I have a request.
They're in the way.
Yeah.
All right. Too busy. Great. So I've picked up 3 more beads on my needle. Black beads this time. And I'm going to go down through the white beads. That's going to form the loop.
I did something wrong already.
No, you didn't.
I didn't.
No.
I have to
You
go
maybe-
down this way?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yes.
the thread's going to go on the outside?
Yeah. No. Inside the beads. No. Yes.
But the thread is coming out on the bottom.
Trust me.
Okay, I trust in you.
Trust in the beads.
Trust me. Trust me. It'll be fine.
Okay.
Now this is an interesting step. Did it work? It did. Oh my God, I was right.
You were right. I never doubted you.
I know. That's fine, Gracie. You don't have to doubt me. I'll just make you do it right. I
Oh
promise. So this is this is
magic.
a really interesting step to be at, because this is a place where you can kind of get out of sync if you don't pay attention.
Yeah, I'm paying attention.
So see how my thread is coming out of the middle stack, out of the white beads, right? I'm not ready to add more beads yet until my thread is coming out of the last added group. So that's going to mean I need to go back up the black beads. Boom, boom. Come here, you. Now,
Emily, you made me promise that I wouldn't stick you with a needle.
don't poke me if you can help it. But that's okay. Sometimes when you're sitting right next to your bead buddy, you get poked with a needle. Right? Right?
Oh.
Perfect. So 3 more beads. Dun, dun,
White.
dun. White this time. Okay. We're going to go up the black beads. I like that you question though, Gracie. I think that's really good.
I just want to make sure that I'm doing it right.
You are.
Like, I've already messed up 2 rows of 2 stacks.
You haven't.
But not yet.
No,
Not
you
yet.
haven't messed anything
No,
up. What are you
no.
talking about?
Just want to make sure.
You're fine.
Okay. But I
So-
think you're pulling tighter than I am.
Probably, but that's okay.
Okay.
Even a little bit of looseness right here is no big deal.
Okay.
Okay. So again, we're in that same kind of awkward position. Our thread's coming out in the middle, right? So to move along, we have to move over. Pull it up snug. Well, I'm glad we have Kate and Janice watching us,
Yeah.
you know? And I'm going to do the same thing to add another group of black beads,
Okay.
right? This time going down through the white ones
Okay.
and looping around. So this is that same looping around path.
You
And then-
drew
Mhm.
the one that you were drawing.
Exactly.
And then I go back up.
Correct. Oh my God, Gracie, you're a natural. What, are you kidding me?
In the
Come on.
words of Kate, you are the boss of those
I
beads.
know. Emily's the boss of me too, because she's like, you're fine. Look. Just pull it tight.
Yeah,
to get
you're
that.
fine. Don't worry. Don't fret. Fret not. Worry not. If it was time to worry, I would tell you to worry, because I love to worry. Worry makes me feel like I'm doing something even if I'm not. Right?
You're ahead of me now.
I might be a tiny bit ahead of you. Right? Down through the white ones.
So you could really do this brick stitch and make it into any shape.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
So, by any shape, Karen's asking a great question. What do you mean by that, Karen? Give me a shape that you would like to have,
Uh,
for instance.
hmm. I
A
don't know.
star.
Oh yeah, a star.
Oh, goodness.
Sure, a star.
A star? You could. Actually, there might be a stitch that would be better for stars than this one.
Oh, there's
Dang
stitches
it.
for everything.
There are stitches for everything.
Jeez.
Actually, the herringbone stitch that we did last time actually would makes a really pretty star.
Oh, cool.
So we can actually do that with it. Think of more like a trumpet, like a flower,
Oh.
right? So herringbone stitch you can actually do in the round, and you can open up those stacks of twos, and it can actually grow and be more flower-like,
Really.
right? 2, 4, 6, 8. I just have one more to go.
Angela wants to know if there's a way to fix this up if you find that the tension is too loose.
Angela, at this stage, you're doing fine. Don't worry.
Okay.
Because there's going to be a step where you're going to go, and you're going to sit back and go, okay, I didn't
I'm
need to
waiting
worry.
for that step.
Just
Don't
like
worry.
that.
Don't worry. So you can see how I have 9. I have 4 white, 5 black in my stacks.
Oh, me too.
It's easy to count, right? So remember I was talking about earlier about the idea that we were going to kind of reinforce these a little bit. And we really want our thread to come out down here out of stack number 1.
Mm-hmm.
So that serpentine stack, serpentine stitching, going up and down each stack. Angela, this is what takes care of any looseness and any wiggle woggle, and it firms it right up. Now you could make a ring this way. You could make a bead this way by just using these stacks. And I would use the same idea for a base to start my herringbone from. Up and down, up and down. It's like you're sewing a seam. Now remember, when you get to the last step, the last stack, we don't really need that stopper bead involved. So I'm going to pull him away so I can come out of stack number 1. So see how much more firm in that is now? It's tightened up much better, huh?
Although I did stick myself.
Oh.
Because I think I was trying to push through the KO.
Oh.
Yeah.
I stuck myself last night with my leather awl.
Oh, that doesn't sound good.
It was not happy at all.
I did
It was
it. I caught up
unhappy.
to
It
you.
was super unhappy. Yeah, but it's a little tender yet on my
Oy,
forefinger,
oy, oy.
right? So here are my 9 stacks, okay? And these are the same 9 stacks that you would see if you looked at this little pyramid here that's getting ready to be made into clasps. I'm going to now start row number 1. And from here on out, each row is going to start the same way. But the start and the rest of the row are a little bit different from one another. So on the starting row of the row, I'm going to pick up 2 beads, okay?
Cool.
Instead of 1. After I do that first stitch at the start of the row, from there on out, it's 1 bead at a time,
Okay.
okay? So I'm going to turn this a little bit so that I'm looking at the loops of thread that go between the stacks. And I'm actually going to take my needle with my 2 beads on it, and from what I consider the back side, the way side from me, towards me, the front side, I'm going to actually take my needle and I'm going to pick up the loop between stacks 2 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I'm going to pause there just for a moment, Brandon. We zoomed in and good? All right. So as I do that and I pull this through, my 2 beads sit side by side, but not the right way yet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I want my beads to sit upright with their holes pointing out.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to bring my needle back up through the last added bead. So this feels like like you're doing the stacks. I'm going to go down through the first one, and in that same step, I'm going to catch the thread loop between the first and second stacks. Pull through. I know, it's a little bit dizzying here. And up through the last added bead. So just like I did when I was adding my stacks, now I'm coming out of the bead right next to where I'm about to add another one. Okay?
Got it.
So I'm going to continue, and I think to make this nice and visible, I'm going to use white beads on this row.
Okay.
So this means I catch the next thread loop, pull the needle through, and go back up the bead. So the thread is what's attaching row to row here. It's a little different from peyote stitch, a little different from herringbone stitch. Under the thread loop, back up the bead.
You two, we have some dedicated people. We have someone watching in South Wales. It's 4 a.m.
Oh my gosh.
Well,
Yeah,
thank
Beth
you for
Barton.
joining us,
Beth, thank you so much. Oh my gosh, I got up at 4:30 our time, which would be yesterday, your time, I think. All right. And I'm going to continue to pick up a bead, catch that thread loop underneath, and go back up the beads all the way across until I run out of loops. How's it feeling, Gracie?
Yep, it's feeling good.
Awesome. Everybody hanging tight at home?
Yep. I
Good.
think everyone's just
Watching.
It's kind of like you have to keep your eyes on it. Otherwise, you miss one step and
Excellent.
you're kind of just going.
All right. There's the last thread loop. And done with that row. So I have actually 8 beads in this row because I started with 9. 9 stacks, 1 less bead. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's going to build my pyramid up from there. Okay? So I like to flip in brick stitch. That means now the tail of my thread and my stopper bead, instead of being in the lower left-hand corner, has moved to the lower right-hand corner, right?
Okay.
And I'm going to go ahead and pick up 2 more turquoisey beads for the next beginning of the next row. So this is again where that little bit of complication comes into play. I'm going to count to the second thread loop, catch it with my needle from back to front, outside to inside, pull my beads up. I'm going to go back up, bead number 2, pull it through, down number 1, catch that thread loop. I hope, who is that in Wales again?
Beth.
Beth is having coffee or tea.
Well,
Getting ready.
Emily, everyone loves you. They say you're just the perfect teacher, and
Oh, good.
you're just mesmerized with
Good.
with your beading.
Am I going fast enough or slow enough for everybody? I know it sometimes feels like it takes a long time to get somewhere with seed beads.
Some
but
people say they're gonna have to just watch it
That's
before
fine.
they
That's
get
fine.
it. That's why we have it posted.
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
In a few different places.
Right? So you can watch it on our YouTube channel, you can watch it on Facebook again, and linked off of our website. So now I'm going to continue with my row, catching the next loop of thread, pulling through, putting my needle back up the bead. Does that make sense now, Gracie? You're feeling?
I'm a pro.
Are you getting the rhythm of this?
I am getting the rhythm.
Good.
Perfect pace.
Good. Good. And I'm going to do I think I might just continue on with this row and do one more row, and then we will move on to putting on a clasp.
Okay.
All right? So one of the things that kind of comes up with brick stitch and peyote stitch, and not only are there differences of how they're stitched, but what the effect looks like later. Well, brick stitch and peyote stitch look related. They really do look very similar. If we turn brick stitch on its side, 90 degrees, it'll actually look like peyote. And if we turn peyote stitch on its side, it will also look like brick stitch. So they do have similarities in look, although they're stitched completely differently. And it also means that they're flexible in different directions. So brick stitch tends to be more flexible on the vertical, this direction, but doesn't bend too well the other way.
Got it.
Peyote does the opposite. Okay? Peyote stitch more flexible.
Some people want to see how you're
Oh,
doing, Gracie.
you want to see Gracie's?
Oh yeah, I took my stopper bead off though.
Yeah.
Look, it looks exactly like Emily's. I know.
Magic.
Thank you so much. I feel so accomplished.
Well, and you know, brick stitch was very hard for me to learn. I had no experience. I had no idea what I was doing. I went to the bead store, my local bead store, and I bought the cheapest beads I could because I really thought that was the smart way to learn, was to buy cheap materials.
Karen made a face.
Karen, you're right. You're exactly right. But I didn't know any better. And so there were no resources out there. Bead and Button was the only magazine. There just wasn't a lot of stuff out there. So I would struggle with those uneven, irregular beads. And boy, I really found out that having better quality beads and threads and everything made life a lot easier.
2 things.
Sure.
Lynn said she never thought in a million years that she would be doing seed beading, so thank you for that.
Me too.
You're
Lynn.
welcome for the addiction.
And Angela wants to know if you're going to show how to add a thread later on.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. And end a thread, because there's going to be a fair amount of that, too. So I'm going to start my new row. I've got 2 more beads, and I'm going to count over 1 thread loop, 2 thread loops. That's the one I want to keep my eye on. Pass my needle under the thread loop. I want you to know I'm also doing this at the very outside edge of my focal range. So pass my needle up the bead. That's that last added one, or the one on the right. And as I pull that down, it really makes them sort of snuggle up and sit together. But to make it very consistent, I go down that number 1 bead, catch the outer thread loop there, the first thread loop, and back up. My goal is to get Janice and Kate both seed beading too. That's my next step. It's my next goal in life.
Good
Right?
luck.
I think it'll work. I think I got Kate kind of hooked in, and she's already doing looming, so she's most of the way there. All right, catch a thread loop, put on a bead. Brick stitch moves along also fairly quickly.
It does.
You know, it's
Surprisingly.
very easy to pattern with. So if I wanted to create a pattern here, it'd be very easy to see where to put the next bead.
Though I lied. Mine doesn't really look exactly like yours. My pattern looks like yours, but my quality does not look like yours.
Ah, baloney.
Yeah. It's all wonky.
Mine's a little wonky too.
You're just being nice.
No, I'm being truthful. I'm mostly truthful rather than nice, just FYI. Although I try to be
That's
both.
how I feel too.
You feel that about me or about yourself?
No, about myself. Karen.
Don't drag me in this.
She's shaking her head.
And here's my last bead add for this row. So I've done 3 rows. I've gone from 9 beads down to 6. And I would just continue doing this until I get to the point where I only have my last 2 beads on that last row, 2 beads, and they're the only 2 beads that are there.
Cool.
All right? Does that make sense?
It does.
Cool. So, yes, Angela, there are some threads to deal with. And I really believe in the same thing with all the needle and thread work that I do. That I'm not going to tie knots with these. Knots plug up the holes of your beads, and it limits your options. So instead of tying a knot, all I need to do is work my thread in and around and back around again. I try to have my thread overlap somewhere.
Is that kind of locking it or something?
Yeah, I think that's
Or
really kind of where we're going. I'm just gonna grab a new.
Here. Do you want these again? Or?
No, I'm gonna grab a new one. I made several, so
Oh,
because I was
you're
smart
prepared.
like that.
You are smart.
Oh, you know what? We'll use this
No
guy,
doubting that.
right? So let's just say that I really wanted to finish off my tail end of my thread.
Yeah, I'm going
This
to
is
show
where
mine
my
with yours. So you
oh,
can see the
they're
blue,
perfect. They're
Yeah.
perfect. They look great. They're exactly
the
the
blue
same.
beads. That's
Yeah. That's nice, huh? It makes you be able to see where you're going.
a smart lady.
Well, once in a while. Like a clock, I'm right twice a day. Any good clock.
Are you counting on the diagonal for this?
For row counts,
Yes.
no, I don't need to.
Okay.
So row number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I don't have to count on the diagonal. Not like peyote stitch. Okay. In fact, maybe I'll make one more chart for you later today, and I'll make one without color. So if you want to draw in for patterning on this, you can. And I should probably make you one that's not a pyramid as well.
I think we should just have these when we download them. Just
Okay. I mean, we can make lots of them. I make them small only because it's easy to work with here in this state. If you print out a full page one, you can still play with the full page.
Totally.
Right? So let's just say I want to deal with this thread right here. I'm going to bring that thread back into the beadwork by going up the neighboring stack. I got no place else to go. Okay. And all I need to do is jog on a little bit of a diagonal, work my way over. And this is what I really like to do. I like to have my thread overlap itself. And then I might jog here and jog over here.
I like that you call it jogging.
Jogging.
It makes me feel good, like I'm exercising.
Like you're
I'm
exercising?
exercising my brain. When you just jog a little.
So
there.
jogging around is a good thing. If you look at this, I inadvertently, not really, drew a bit of a figure 8. Okay, and let me give you another bit of hard-won advice. For years, I couldn't understand why I would have little fuzzy bits of thread sticking out of my beadwork.
Okay.
That was because I tried to cut my thread on the outside edge. Never do that. Cut your thread interior, in here somewhere. Any place but on the edge. And then you don't have those little fuzzy, stupid bits of thread poking out, and you're like, I can't cut it close enough.
Oh my gosh.
Ah! So, this is a no-no. You want to bring your thread interior somewhere and cut it there. Okay? So you're coming out of the middle of your beadwork. You're coming out right there, and you're cutting it off there.
Makes sense.
Okay?
Makes sense.
So that little figure 8 jog that I did, lap or 2.
I'm gonna wear tennis shoes next time.
Right.
I'm on air with you.
We're going to get little tennis shoes for our fingers, so we can do like this.
This is the track. Oh my gosh. You're wearing brick stitch tennis shoes.
No, I totally lie. I'm totally losing it. Okay, wait. Back on track here. This is the same thing I would do to add thread. Now, I have a tendency when I'm teaching students something new to let them leave an old thread sort of dangling. Then you know where you're headed back to. If you feel confident or you're at this stage and we're about to add thread to continue on of our stranding, you don't actually have to start that thread at the same time. But if you're in the midst of this pyramid and you don't want to lose your way, leave the old thread dangling, start the new one coming out the exact same spot, and then go back and deal with that old thread and motor on with your new thread.
Cool.
Once your work has been tightened up, do you find that it's harder to wiggle or weave your needle back through?
Nope.
No.
So here's the benefit to brick stitch. Oops. Sorry, it was a magic trick. I swept that one out of the way. So either brick or peyote stitch, if you have to get to the hole, bend it open. All right? So,
Show that again.
sure. If you have to get to a hole, like let's just say this is a difficult spot where I'm trying to put my needle in through here and it's tight to get in, that's okay. Just bend it so that you can get into it.
This is why you don't do knots.
Right.
Part
of the reason I don't do knots. I also find that knots show, and that knots they're not good. I mean, let's not go there. But sorry,
That's not.
Yeah.
Right. So in this brick stitch, which I was waiting for someone to say, wait, that doesn't look like brick stitch. I began here at the end. This was the beginning row, my rows of stacks, and since I didn't want to create the pyramid, I beaded using 2 beads as my first 2 beads of the row, but I used the first thread loop. And so what that does is, actually it was this gray, it pushes that first 2 beads outside a bit to the edge, right? And not only did I not use the pyramiding style, I used 2 beads at a time. So where I picked up 2 beads in the stack row, I also picked up 2 beads in each row. So each row is just these one color. Okay?
Makes a lot of sense.
Does that make
You
more
break it
clear?
down really well.
More clear?
Yeah.
I don't want to give you too much at once, but it's exciting to
no.
get to the fun stuff,
Yeah,
right?
that makes a lot of sense.
So I worked my way across the row, and when I got to the end, I ran out of loops, and it's a little bit short here. Okay? I started my next row, flipping it over. So the red beads were the next row, right? 2 at a time, all the way across. So I could have done 3 at a time. I could have done 5 at a time.
Right.
Just treat that group of beads as one bead. Okay? It's as if it's one bead, even though it's multiple pieces.
Cool.
Yeah. So notice that brick stitch done flat has a sawtooth edge on its outer boundaries. It's north, east and west. Okay? If this was a piece of peyote stitch, it would be this direction. I would have a sawtooth edge on the top and bottom of my piece. The thread path would be different as well. I could actually peyote right along that strip if I wanted to. No big deal. 2-drop peyote,
That's awesome.
right? Okay.
I'm setting a challenge.
I know.
Just kidding.
I know.
No, I'm just kidding.
One more question before you guys get to
Sure.
the meat of this project. Can you clarify, Emily, are you using your existing thread paths when you make the figure 8 before you tie it off? If that makes any sense.
Yeah, certainly. I'll go back to this little sample. I am jumping across the row here. So I came up through here. I moved over, up and around, down, across. So I have to go across here. And that's okay. You'll be in between the rows. It won't show. And back up and around and out. Okay? So that little figure 8 just uses the existing joins of the rows, the openings between the rows, and the holes in the beads for that. Yep. Okay? All right. So let's move on to adding a clasp. We're going to put those
Sounds
samples
good.
aside for just a moment. All right. And I did make a little something for Gracie. That's so
You did.
true.
I did it. No, I'm just
No,
kidding.
Gracie did it all by herself before she had any of this. She just took it upon herself.
Right.
Okay. I think what I'm going to do is turn my mat around.
Okay. I'm
So
gonna
I
do
have-
it near me though.
Okay, that's fine. I have a clear work surface. Okay. So these 2 pyramids are actually the base of my bracelet. And I want to bring this guy over here so you can kind of see where he goes. Right? So I'm going to build a button on one side and a loop on the other. And we've chosen, of course, these check buttons, which are just amazeballs. Look at them.
Thanks.
Yep. And we also chose this really beautiful runaround shell bead. Or shell button. I really love shell buttons. They're kind of one of my favorites, and
They're so beautiful.
they are so beautiful. So a button of these in between these 2 sizes is perfect for this piece. You could use a bead as a button if you preferred, a bigger bead, like I have done on this loom woven bracelet. So I used a bead as the
cool.
button, and there's the loop. Right?
Very cool.
Okay, so you can do that as well if you choose.
I love that pattern.
Mm.
I know. We're all distracted.
Wait, what's
Easily
that?
distracted.
Pull that in and out of the picture too quickly.
Yeah, a little bit.
Sorry.
It's supposed to the claspy part.
Sorry. I'll go back. So instead of using a button, I used a bead. So what I needed was just a bead that was kind of round or rondelle shaped rather than flat, right? And I used my thread through my looming, through the bead, picot, 3 beads, and back down through, okay? Then I made a loop to go right over the top of it as my button. This is just a little bit of loom work.
Is there a bead in the bead?
There's some beads right at the top.
Okay.
You want to see it? There you go, Karen. So I'm going to grab a needle, and I will go ahead and dispense with a thread here.
Oh, I reused my other one.
Oh, okay.
But thank you.
No, sure. I'm going to dispense with my tail thread. So this is the tail that I started with. I don't have my stopper bead on. I took that off. And I'm going to go ahead and thread my needle with that tail end thread. You know, KO thread is kind of handy because it's a fibery thread. If you get a little bit of it through, it'll pull through the rest. And just like I talked about before, I'm going to bury this thread. Is bury okay versus jogging? Jogging and burying. So I just come up the stack that's right next door. I'm going to just pop up a few beads, And I am working on the diagonal here because that's where the beads are open to me. Through.
Okay.
Over a couple. And, oh, I really wanted to go one more. Oh, well. I'll go back up this guy. I got a loop. I didn't quite get the figure 8 this time. There we go. And so you can see this is where my thread's coming out now. It's coming out in the beadwork, not on the edge. Okay? Pull it up snug. And I'm going to clip it. You could use your thread burner as well. But now I don't have that gnarly little tail of thread fuzzing out and driving me bananas. Right? It's not nice to drive Emily crazy.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. Don't do it. It's not pretty. And then I'll go to my thread that's my existing thread and go right ahead and thread my needle on there too. You get good at threading needles with seed beads, right?
I do.
You do. Now I like to pull my thread up double, so I'm going to overlap the end of the thread. So before we were working with our thread single, but this is a more durable way to have that thread. I'm going to need a few beads.
Okay. How many is a few?
Now I'm just going to take a little pour from here.
Oh,
Give
thank
you
you.
a little pour too.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, you don't need very many. Well, you might need some more for your loop.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And really what we're looking at is making a loop of beads for the button to ride on. Okay. And I think I chose about 6 beads. We just want it to move in lots of directions. Your clasps will last longer if they don't bind up where your button is. If you put a lot of force, a lot of binding in place where that gets caught on things, then you will find yourself doing lots of repairs, which is not so much fun. I'm going to slip my needle with my beads on it right through the button shank and let it go right down to the little pyramid there.
Very cool.
Yeah. I'm going to actually take my needle back in and I'll go down a bead or two. Sorry, am I moving away?
I'm trying to
Focus.
a bead or two.
Yep. That's just to start with. Just to get everything all pulled together. Beautiful. You did it. You did it. Easy. And I will
Go around again?
go around again. Yep. Go right through all my beads on my button and my button shank again. And I'm going through the button shank by going through the beads. So there's no thread outside of the beads at this point around my button. Okay. Going right around and down.
Yep.
And then I can go right in here and bury that end. Take a couple of jogs. As Grace likes to say, jog around. There we go. Ooh, voila. And I can go in here and clip off this thread. He's not important anymore. And here we have 1/2 of the clasp. You know, you could kind of liken this to putting a cone on the end of a piece of jewelry. This is a multiple strand bracelet that we're going to join with 2 somewhat cone-shaped things. So it's somewhat similar to that. I know we have some multi-strand things coming up for the retreat, which is very exciting. I'm getting real excited about that in a few weeks. And I just can't wait to hang out and bead with a bunch of people because I love that. And we'll get to go and have lunch together and dinner together and breakfast together. I'm just looking forward to nobody's business.
I'm looking forward to whatever you made us. I'm holding you to that. Last week you said you had a surprise for us.
Yeah, but it's not going to be at the retreat.
Oh.
It's gonna be after that. What do you mean?
I don't know.
I want to know now because I wasn't here last week.
I just gave it away. Sorry.
Thanks, Karen. No. When it comes time when we get to doing crochet again, we're gonna come up. That's coming along. I have a special treat for everybody, and
okay.
you guys will get one too. Don't worry.
Yay.
But it means doing crochet.
Okay.
All right.
Down.
Do you know how to crochet?
Well, I watched you, so maybe I
Okay.
do. Through
Karen?
osmosis.
No.
No. All right. We'll work on that first.
I don't know if I have the patience.
Oh yeah, you do.
It looked really easy when
It
we
is
did
really
it.
easy.
Yeah.
So next would be to make the loop side.
Okay, that's mine.
There you go. Perfect, Grace.
Oh, I didn't cut it off though.
That's all right.
Okay.
That's you can do that in a minute. So the next thing is to do the loop side. I always like to do the button first because I want the loop to match. If you make the loop first and then you have to go around and finding a button to fit it, you're Cinderellaing around in a really awkward way,
Oh.
right?
Yeah.
Let's not do that.
No.
So I'm going to pick up some beads, and it's hard to say how many to start with. I would say maybe a good 20 or so if you're going to count. I actually usually don't count. I'm kind of lazy that way. I don't like following charts
Okay, Emily.
or directions. My IKEA furniture always comes out a little awkward, but I don't like having leftover parts either. But I really like to kind of make it as I go, and so I'm not a big pattern follower.
You
So,
make your own patterns.
I do as I go along.
Yeah. Well, even for your clothes and stuff, you make patterns.
I do, but not as much for my clothes.
Oh,
I mean, I those patterns I do follow because I know that they're going to fit and work.
Oh, okay.
Right. Whereas this, if it doesn't work, it just ends up in the jar.
Oh, so how many am I adding right now?
I'm going to say let's do inches instead of
okay. How many
numbers.
inches? 2
Why
inches?
don't you do about 2 inches or
Okay.
so? Because this loop has to be big enough for my button to pass through well.
Okay.
I would rather have it be slightly tight initially than too loose initially.
Okay.
Okay? And so having a loop that's just the right size is really the goal. But if we're having to err on the side of being a bead or two looser or a bead too tighter, let's go a little tighter.
Okay.
Okay? Because thread will stretch out over time. And one way to test this is to actually have the thread away from your beadwork for the moment. And to make a little loop out of the thread, just like that, and test that the button will pass through. Because really, this is what you're going to be doing every time you want to put this on your wrist. So it's really no different than putting the toggle on first, the ring on first on your clasp. Yeah, I think that's kind of okay. Got a little bit of space, but I think I'm fine. Right.
I think mine's a little too loose, actually.
Is it?
Maybe.
Yeah, I would take a
Maybe
little off.
1 or 2.
And I've doubled up my thread again, right, like I did last time. So I pulled my thread so I'm double. And I'm going to go down through a couple of beads. Now, here's a place, also hard-won information, hard-won knowledge. And by hard-won, I mean the School of Hard Knocks. Doing it a couple of times and not having it work. I'm just going to go through maybe 2 beads here to start. Because, being the soul of caution that I am, once I've got this pulled up, I'm actually just going to double check that my button is going to fit through there. Just with a little bit of a stretch. Yeah, I'm feeling pretty confident about that. Okay? So now I feel comfortable that I can pull this up firm, tight, and go through it again for another pass to make it really sturdy and stable. And I'm just going to go through the beads till I get to about the halfway point. And I'm going to add a little picot.
I didn't do that.
That's all right. It's all right. And I'm adding this picot. It's purely decorative. It doesn't. You do not have to add a picot if you don't like it or want it, or if you've forgotten. That's okay. And if you have an uneven number of beads, the loop doesn't really divide evenly, that's okay as well.
Again, did you say Kago stretches over time?
All of the threads will stretch a little bit over time.
Okay, and maybe in the episode notes, can you can you mention how many beads you used for the
Loop? I think I measured up about an inch and a half, maybe. Let's see here. So it would have been about 32. So your beads may vary a little bit in size and shape, and if you picked up all skinny ones, you might need 34. Okay? And I'm going to pick up 5 beads more. So I'm at the halfway point. Pick up 5. I'm going to skip over 1, go back down 1, actually go back down 2, and pull that up to that spot in the middle. And then go back down the other side of the loop. I'm giving myself a little picot-y feel out here. What did I do? Did I miss a bead? Something's not happening correctly. Oh, sorry, Charlies. So here's the trick. When you stitch, if you make a mistake, with doubled thread especially, never, please never do this. Never try to unstitch yourself by putting the needle back through.
Oh, I already did that. Wait, why?
Well, there's always a good chance that you're going to mess it up. You're going to split your thread.
Oh, okay.
So here's what you can do. Instead of doing that, carefully pull your thread back, eye first. So what's coming out of my beads first? The eye of the needle. All right? And this will give me a chance to unwiggle this and unsplit it if I can manage it. Oh, and I've really made a split. Let's see here. There we go. And pull that eye out again. Don't try, please, promise me you won't, all of you watching at home, promise me you won't try to pull the needle out by rethreading the point of the needle back into the beads. It won't go well. Everybody with me here? Yeah, that's good.
Angela said, "Who just swore out loud for Emily?"
That's pretty funny.
So,
Am I doing this right?
Yep, you're fine. You're
Okay,
good.
then
Yep.
Get on a,
You're
what
good?
you were doing there.
All right. I picked up, what I needed to do is I needed to add a couple more beads to even out the end of my picot. So I have a little bit of a chunkier picot here at the end. I'll go over picot in just a minute with pen and paper so we can talk about it. Hang on a minute. And work my way down through that loop, back down to the beadwork, and jog a bit. Take a lap.
I'm just going to giggle every time I say that.
I take a lap in my beadwork to deal with my thread. Okay. It's always fun to see the teacher make a mistake in
It's
class.
not fun. It's actually informative.
It
'cause
is
if we
informative.
make
You're right.
that mistake.
If you
then-
do it yourself,
Right.
that's fine.
Uh-oh. But,
Jogging, jogging. Now, the rest of this bracelet that we do, we're actually going to have to use doubled thread because we want the strands to be sturdy. And this is a time where we could be using something like Fireline, which is a little bit stronger thread than KO. But Fireline, you do give up a little bit of your flexibility with Fireline. And I really like to have my things be nice and drapey. I'm going to cut that off and cut that off. Okay? So I'm free of tails except for my beginner tail. And now I have my clasp portion of my bracelet ready to roll. Okay?
Yay.
Yay? Yeah, you do.
Uh-oh. Here's the true test.
It's okay. You're fine.
Yay.
Yeah, you did it. Perfect. Isn't that pretty? I
It
love
is
that
really
cornflower blue. It's just gorgeous.
It's really nice.
So also on our workbench today, we did a little bit of handy tape. And if you are comfortable with knowing what your wrist measures, and why don't you pull the
Oh, sorry.
measuring tape out of there. Yeah. Doing this little process is pretty easy. I'm actually going to take the end of the tape and I'm going to measure my wrist. Yeah. So remember how I told you I like to have my beadwork just about touch around my wrist? So for me, that's about 7 inches. I have a pretty big wrist, pretty strong, muscular wrist. Lots of beading in there.
Mm-hmm.
What I like to do, and this is the measurements and things that I use for any of my bracelets that I make, I add about 1 inch of ease. So what I'm looking for is a bracelet that's at its finished length, that includes the clasp, about 8 inches long. I would guesstimate on another person if they said, make me a bracelet, and I measured their wrist. Might even ask them, do you like your bracelets to be a little tighter or a little looser? So I would estimate to add between 3/4 of an inch and 1 inch for ease.
Okay.
So ease is truly just the ability to put the bracelet on and off and not have it be just choking your wrist off. Okay? So for me, my measurement's 8 inches. Okay? So that means that if my clasp, which is what this is, measures just about 2 inches, that the strands of beads
6.
in between are 6. Hey, Gracie. And I think what's easiest to do is to mark that measurement, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Mark it down somewhere, a physical marker, so that you can actually lay your work in between there and double check that measurement. If your bracelet comes with a shorter here or there thread, probably not so critical. But what would happen if you worked from one side to the other here, making your strands, and they got shorter and shorter and shorter? It wouldn't work the way you wanted it to. Okay,
Yeah.
we want all of our strands to be right in that measurement, as close as possible. How about you, Gracie? What's your measurements? Well, we don't have to talk about measurements particularly, but what's your measurements?
About 6 1/4.
Okay.
I want to say.
About
Or-
6 1/4. So do you like
is
your
it this? Is it this end of it, or is it like the metal part?
the metal part?
Okay, so yeah, 6 1/4.
Okay, lighter or tighter or looser fit, you think, on your bracelets?
Medium.
Okay.
Not too loose, not too tight, just right.
Well, here's the kicker,
Okay.
which is kind of amazing. Grace is about 6 1/4
Right.
measurement, right? What's the average woman's bracelet size? 7 inches.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. So we're really adding that about that 3/4 inch, and that
Oh,
puts you
in
kind of
there
in
it
that
says it.
average
Oh, okay.
number, right?
Cool.
So it's pretty common that when I sit in a classroom full of people that I look around the room and I can kind of guess people's wrist size. But that doesn't always apply to that personal amount of wear and tear. How do you like your bracelets? Some people really like their bracelets to slide all around and have lots of dingly dangly bits to it. I'm kind of in the middle. I like my bracelets sort of normal.
Yeah. Then I guess that is what I want.
Yeah. So you're about a 7-inch bracelet, which is
Okay. Perfect.
pretty average. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. There's times when average is not so good, but average in this case is pretty handy. All right. So I'm going to start my bracelet making my strands in between these two openings. And Grace, I'm going to let her measure hers and we'll mark it down here on the bottom. But this particular bracelet, this particular design, this is called Autumn Garden, Fall Garden, something. What this is a little bit of what I'd like to call rustic netting. So we're going to do netting, but it's not going to be so counted or so even. But using these little half
love
tilas
that.
really makes this have lots and lots of texture to it. So something that's fairly simple, a great little mixer. If I wasn't going to use the half tilas, if I was going to just be using strands of beads, like Grace is going to do on hers, I did this also with sort of rustic intention of spreading out pearls and daisy spacers to give this sort of a real jewelry sort of look. I really love making gifts for friends, and oftentimes when they want jewelry is around their weddings. And so I really thought this could be something blue,
Right.
because that beautiful cornflower blue button.
Aw.
Really? And
That's
it would
really
be
nice.
really nice to also maybe make the same bracelet for a bunch of bridesmaids. And it would be something that you might wear later.
Right.
Not that you'll ever wear that bridesmaid dress again, but you might wear these jewelry later.
It's true.
We all have a few of those,
No,
right?
yeah, of course.
So we used a nice ivory pearl white bead, a size 11 seed bead, some rice pearls, and silver-plated daisy spacers to give it that set in metal sort of effect. You could also use these daisy spacers the way I did in this particular piece, where I used the daisy spacers alone. So that'd be another way to add some texture to these strands and kind of give it some different texture that is not so easy to come by with just with glass beads. Those are little pink hexes.
Hex, yeah.
Yeah, aren't those fun?
That's cool.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to use the green beads in my half tilas, and going between my measurements, every so often I'm going to throw a half tila on it. And a tila, of course, has 2 holes. So on one strand pass, I'm going to go through one hole, and then on the next strand pass, I'm going to go through the other. Grace is just simply going to ping pong back and forth, back and forth. You'll probably have to thread your bead, needle and thread about 3 times for this.
Okay.
And using double thread means you still can use about 1.5 yards doubled, so about 3 yards maybe at a maximum.
Sure.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and pull off a bit of thread.
How many are in between, by the how many strands?
9.
9. Oh. Of course.
You know how many.
Oh, gosh.
I'm going to pull off some thread, bury it, and get started.
Okay.
And then we'll see how that works out, and let Gracie do hers as well. Right?
Will a 2-hole bead work
Yes.
in place of the tile bead?
Yep. I like those little tilas, or tilas, I don't know.
Do you mind if I use that pen?
Not at all.
Thank you.
Just for the record,
Yes.
if people are looking for the bead, I believe it's called cobalt in our.
Oh, you're right. The cornflower. It's not cornflower blue. It's called cobalt. The button is the cobalt flower, cobalt daisy,
Daisy.
and the other one's called
Tangerine.
tangerine daisy. Is it? Yeah. Okay. Did you name it?
No.
No.
But it was one of my favorite
Oh,
colors.
yeah.
And
You know,
everyone,
orange.
we have a section for the check buttons alone
Right.
if you go to components.
Yeah.
Just so
And
people-
or just in, right? They
Yeah.
also show up in there.
Mhm.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and take one end of my bracelet, and doesn't really matter which one, and start a new thread. So remember the jogging?
Can you bring it forward?
Sure. I'm going to jog around, and I'm going to avoid beginning and ending on the edge so that I don't have those pesky little weird threads. And in this case, I don't really need to leave much of a tail. I can pull my thread right down to the very ends. And what I want to do is have my thread, my goal here is to have my thread coming out of stack number 1. So we're kind of getting back to stacks again. Because each of these stacks is what's going to hold the threads for my strands. And I'll give you here's another secret about starting a new thread. This is probably the little tip that's worth its near weight in gold. Do you want to know when you've gotten your new thread anchored in? Do you want to know when it's secure?
Yes.
Pull it. So right now, if I pull on my new thread, nothing is moving. My 2 little tails stay the same. So that lets me know that I'm anchored in well enough to move on to stitching.
I just pulled it all the way out.
Off the needle? Good girl.
No. I pulled it through the beadwork and I just pulled the
Oh,
whole
right
thing out.
straight
like,
through? Awesome. Okay. So here's my first thread. And I'm going to pick up a few
Are you working double threaded again?
I am
Emily?
working double thread. I have to work double thread here because I want it to be sturdy enough to hold up to being worn, right? My strands have to reach in between these two stripes so that I know I've got enough thread and enough length to make the bracelet. I'm just going to pick up a few for my rustic netting, a few size 11 beads, and put on a tila or tila. Do we have a name for that? Is it really tila? Is it tila? Tila? We don't know.
I've heard people say both. I say Tyla, but what do I know?
I guess it's supposed to be like a little tile, right?
Half of a tile.
Half a tile? Half tila?
Which side do I pull on to make sure it's anchored in there? Is it the one that's coming out or
Mm.
this one?
Well, it could be either one,
This one's
actually. Okay,
Okay.
sure. So, and I like my little volcanoes, which I don't think are on screen at the moment, but the way I find it's easiest and fastest to pick up beads is to scoot my needle through a little pyramid of beads, a little volcano of beads. And every so often I'm going to put a half tila on.
Jana's putting caps. Tyla.
She wants me to pick one. You trying to tell me to pick one, Janice? Tyla. Okay.
What
Fine.
color is this? Just kidding.
They're teasing me because I sometimes have a speech impediment.
Well, it's not an impediment. It's like an accent.
It is an
cute.
accent. So, you guys, I grew up actually not too far from where Janice lives now. And Virginia and Maryland have some southern accents in them. So, I refer to this
Generic color. I guess.
color
Yeah.
that's sort of like a pumpkin or the color of the fruit that's the same. I call it orange.
Orange. I'm
Not-
wearing orange
not
today.
Orange, which I have to work really hard with my mouth to say orange, but orange.
Orange.
A-R-N-G-E. Because that's what I learned as a little kid. It's orange.
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 Melanie says it that she's the same way, but with her British accent.
Right.
Tyla.
Oh, Tila.
Tilla. Janice is going to get mad. What did she say?
Everyone's laughing.
Orange.
But I can't help it. I'm sorry. It's just the way I was brought up.
Oh, Mary wants to know, she doesn't have any half Tylas, so
Uh-huh.
could she use super duos?
Sure. Anything with 2 holes would work in this case.
That'd be interesting, super duos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Especially the duets. Is that the
Duos?
one with the,
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah.
two?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. All right. I'm just about to the end of my rope strand. Sorry. Let's see.
Now Gita's chiming in, but she put orange with her Danish as the accent on one of the E's.
That's pretty funny.
I don't tell everyone about that either, by the way, y'all. So, see, and I have the y'all every once in a while.
It's just a secret between us.
It just kind of slips out. And
We
my
have like an after show that's called like Bead Shop Secrets.
oh,
It's like we have like each employee has like a moment in front of a
Oh,
dark
yeah.
wall.
yeah,
And they're
with a
not
back
everyone
note
knows
so
that.
that you can't see their face.
Yeah.
It's like witness protection.
Exactly. And then there's like beads in the background. Oh gosh, silliness.
So, here's my first row, my first strand, and you can see that I what?
Oh,
Astria,
Oh,
she added to it.
not bead related.
Oh.
secret agent. I'm gonna add 2 more beads. I think I just want 2 more on there.
No, it's yours. I have 2.
Are you? 2 more. All right. So here's my measurement. Right on the lines. All right. So I'm going to pick up my other end. And I'm going to go up a stack. This happens to be stack number 9. Since I'm using double thread, I will take the time to make sure this is even And then I'm going to go down stack number 8. Now, you know when Janice and Kate talk about stringing beads, that they talk about leaving a little room to breathe. I actually have the same opinion. And I actually do it a little differently. I'll actually form it into a circle to make sure that that's flexible and drapey before I tighten anything up or go to the next step. And sometimes what that means is that when you hold it up vertically, there's a little gap of thread showing. And that's okay because it disappears when I go around in a circle. Okay? So if I lay this back down, now I don't really need to have that measurement because as long as my strands are the same length, I'll be fine. Okay? But I will use that measurement there to double check myself periodically.
Okay.
Just to make sure I'm not getting too tight. So now with my netting going along, I'm going to pick up a few beads, and it's going to be the same number that's there or close to it. Go through the other hole of the tila. I had to think about it there for a second. And I'm going to pick up some more seed beads. Now to plan ahead from the rest of my netting, when I get about half or so as many beads as I want before the next tila, I'm going to pick up another one because I'll use that one on the third row. So netting is something that we're going to get into in depth at the retreat.
The resort.
Yeah, I know. I almost said resort. I can't wait.
Because she's
It's
thinking
not
of the
really going to
beach.
be a vacation, but it's going to be fun.
It is going to be fun.
Yeah, yeah. You guys are all coming, right?
Should be.
Yeah. My
Get
God, it's
back
going to be
from
way fun.
My trip at that
That's
time.
right. Just in time,
Yep.
right?
Well,
So,
I'm already planning the next one.
are we? Right on. I'm so excited. I'm ready for the next one.
Well, they're planning it in the little group here to the check.
Oh, I want to go to the.
Awesome.
I want to go too. Can I go too?
Everybody wants.
Can I go to the Czech Republic? I want to go there too.
And September is beautiful.
I bet. I bet. And right through that next tila. So I'm going to continue. Sorry, is it wrong? Tila? Oh shoot.
They're
Sorry,
still going
Janice.
at it in here.
About pronunciation?
Yep.
That's hilarious.
So I'm going to continue adding and going through tilas, and adding more tilas right along. Okay? And I can vary this as much as I want. I really did this in much more of a rustic manner than any kind of planned out kind of pattern.
I'm
So-
just gonna quickly just do that. Right?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it's too
Too long? Oh, but you can come over here now. I don't really
Sorry,
need
sorry.
that. Go in. Go.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's kind of close.
So
but I
here's
don't
one of the
really
things I
like
want to show about Grace's too, and I'm glad this is why we're doing a couple of different versions of this. So when you end like this, and you're going to add your next piece, I don't know where he is, but if you add too many fat beads at the end, it's going to get kind of bulky. So you may want to have just maybe 2 or 3 seed beads
Yeah.
before the end.
I think I just made mine too long, and I will adjust that. So.
Yeah. And you did one without daisies. Is that
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
Okay. Good. Okay. Good. Grace is doing it her way too. So the other samples that we have, this is the more fog and mist. You know, every morning I drive down here, and truly I do drive on one of the most beautiful drives over the Bay Bridge, over the San Francisco Bay, and I'll sneak little looks to the left and to the right of looking out at the bay and Treasure Island and the ships coming and going and the cross beams on the bridge. And really, this is the color palette that's there, is this white and gray and blue and silver. All that color palette is just all around me all the time. And so it's one of really my most favorite things. I really like it a whole lot. So we have the silver gray palette, we have the garden palette, and the wedding palette. All some favorite things of mine, you know. I love gardens in the fall. There's all that last bit of greenery and last bit of pumpkins and oranges and persimmons and sunflowers and that greenery that's beginning to kind of get stemmy and woody and cluster all together. All those are great inspirations for me.
Cool.
Cool.
So now I just weave it through this.
You're going to go in one, the one on the end, and down. Yep, that's right.
Cool.
Which button did you guys use on the mist bracelet again?
This one is the run around. It's the shell button with some very delicate engraving on it that's also been oxidized or darkened so that you can see it. And on this button, it's a little bit of a variation. Instead of going through the shank, I had to go through the holes. So I added 2 beads below it, came through the button, added 3 to cover up the holes, went down and added 2 more beads, jogged around, went back through, and then jogged around and tied it off. Okay? Trying to think if there's something else I want to say. I think we're kind of getting near time.
Sounds good.
Yeah? Questions?
Everyone just, again, they keep talking about your teaching, and they just are grateful to have you as a teacher.
Excellent, excellent. I have one last little graph to show you. And this was the one that I did on my bracelet the newest one I'm working on. And instead of using, oh, there it is, hiding. Let's get rid of this guy. Instead of having it form that pyramid shape, and the graphs are also included in episode notes. Remember now, these are my base rows down here. All right, went around and around, adding my base rows. And that loop of thread, now I start to use the loop between the first 2 stacks instead of between the second and third. So when I add the first 2 beads, these guys are 1 bead, I use that thread loop right there to add them. Okay? Just go slip right under it and go right back up. Add 2 more beads, go under and back up. And so each of these rows are formed of a stack of beads, 2 beads instead of just 1. And I'll have to tell you that works up much more quickly. It builds a bracelet much more speedily. And it adds a little bit of texture, which I really quite like. So what I did on this graph was showed you in 2 different colors, or 3 different colors, so that you could actually kind of play along with that. And I'll make another one for Janice too that's a black and white one. Or you can print it out in black and white on your printer.
We have a request to see your pink sample again. People want to see the pink hex beads. And can you briefly discuss Pico? Is it purely decorative?
Pico, yes. Purely decorative. Pico, Pico, Pico. I'm glad I made a few blanks. So, ending with a Pico, let's just say a very short loop of beads for my button. I'm only going to do like 3 beads. And I add some beads, okay? So these are going to be these beads right here, okay? I'm going to add some more beads to be the Pico, and I'll color them in. So these beads are still on my thread. I'm going to pick up bring those 3 beads, bring my needle through those 3 beads, and I'm going to have to pass back down through a common bead, one bead that pulls them all together. Okay? Then I can add more beads for the rest of my loop. Okay? And the Pico just sits on top by virtue of it having the thread that goes up through and then goes back down into that same bead. Okay? It has to have a joining bead to make that happen. On this little bracelet, and you'll be able to see these on the project map. I think they're already up. This one has a bead, one of my little fire polish here, with a single bead that makes the Pico on the end. You see him?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm.
And this one I saved a daisy spacer for the picot,
I like that.
right?
I like
Because I want to bring it back. I want to connect them all. Cool. Yeah? Did I get them?
That's yeah.
Cool. What else we got? Brandon, anything? More comments coming?
Everyone loves all the samples, especially the pink ones.
Those pink hexes are real pretty. I wish I knew where those came from. They're old, so who knows where they came from.
Well, I mean, we have the pink cubes.
Mm-hmm. The
mean,
pink
they're-
little cubes would be kind
yeah.
of cute in there. Yeah, yeah. Good fun, right? So, a couple of things coming up. We have
Should I
some.
move the
I think you're ready. Yeah, I think we're ready. Let Brandon pull back the camera a little bit. We have some specials coming your way today for hanging out with us on Facebook Live. We have a giveaway. If you will put
Hold
in
on
your
for a moment. I'm still
Sure.
moving the camera.
if you will put in your shipping notes stuck on sticky mats, we will give you this great little tool. You know, I like working on these velvet pads, but sometimes you don't have the space for it. And if you really want to work in a small zone and keep your beads and needles kind of together, these little sticky mats work really, really good. And they're from Beadsmith. We love these guys. But you can throw little beads on there and they like stick like magic. I mean, it doesn't come off. You can throw your needles on there, stuck, doesn't come off.
Huh.
Yeah, I really like them. If you find yourself with helpers at home, and by helpers I mean cats, and children, people like that, people who want to move your stuff around, the sticky mats are really great because they keep your stuff in place. And so that can be really, really
And
nice.
I remember we talked about using this with the jewel loom too. So it
Yeah,
won't move
yeah, so it
around.
doesn't move around.
Mhm.
Yep, absolutely. Actually, I have something very similar to this that holds my cell phone on my dashboard in my car. So there's another good reason for it. So we're going to send you one of these free if you buy, do your purchase in the next hour, but for about 110 today. Nice little sticky mat. And if you want to get extras, you can. They're also on the web, so that's a nice thing to add to them. Good little treat for another friend beater if you have one that you hang out with. And our store-wide sale is ongoing. And this is Fest 15, which is referencing, of course, Kate and Janice, who are going to be at Bead
Right.
Fest. Kate's there already teaching away like a master that she is. And Janice will be joining her on Friday. So Saturday evening, I think they're having a little meet and greet. There'll be some notes about that on Facebook coming up. So you'll have a chance to make some notes if you're going to be in the Philly area. I really enjoyed going to Bead Fest Philadelphia last year. It's a great bead show. There's a lot of varieties of things there, a lot of neat people to meet.
Cool.
I think you should try and get there if you have a chance. Maybe next year we'll have to
Yeah,
have a
maybe.
field trip.
Yeah.
All of us go. I know you guys would hate it if we did that, right? And I'm sure there's going to be some good shopping too.
Cool.
So they're going to come home with some neat things, I'm sure. Cool.
Well, thank you so much, Emily. I learned brick stitch
Yeah.
and I really enjoyed it.
Good.
Yes,
Good.
I
I'm
really
super
did.
glad.
Yeah.
I'm super glad. You're not afraid.
I'm not
No
afraid,
fear.
and you guys shouldn't be either.
No fear.
Because Emily's a great teacher when it comes to seed beads.
Well, you know, I love teaching. It's like my happy comfort zone. I never thought that I would be quite that way. I had a great public speaking teacher in college who really took away the fear of public speaking for me. So I can get up and talk in front of anybody now.
Sounds good.
With no problems.
But you
So.
explain things really well, and so you just walked us through this.
Cool. Well, I hope
Really
you guys
nicely.
liked it, and I hope you guys make some of these. I think these are great gifts. You know, we're heading towards the gifting season. You may as well get
True.
started now because it's
really
going to be
easy.
here any minute.
And it's effective.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And this is something that you handmade all by yourself, the whole thing. You didn't have to buy components much or anything.
Right, right.
Yep, but you get to pick out pretty buttons for it too. Think
Sounds
we're
good.
done?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're out.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gita. Thank you, Kate and Janice. I know you guys are working hard behind the scenes.
Yes.
And thank you, Brandon, for filming and being very patient with me. And Karen,
Like,
thank
pick
you
up
for your
Ellen's
help. You're like,
book.
what? Thank you for your help. And we'll see you guys next week for Bead Shop. And earrings next
Earrings,
week. Yeah,
yes.
earrings next week. Good fun.
Thank
See you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.